When you join ASUG, you'll never face an SAP challenge alone again. We connect our members to exclusive educational opportunities and a community of like-minded peers so you can get the most value from your SAP investment. Get smart fast and learn from the best. Stay on the leading edge of SAP practices and get access to the latest research, insights, and unbiased editorial and interviews from industry experts and your peers. Expand your network. ASUG makes up the biggest, most diverse, and most engaged SAP user group in the world. Any question or challenge you have, there's someone who's seen it before. Connect with a network of 130,000 plus SAP savvy professionals to solve complex business challenges, work smarter, and expand your SAP skills. Get set to lead. Improve your SAP expertise by collaborating with peers to solve business challenges and find innovative solutions. With 38 regional chapters, you and your teams can connect and meet with other SAP professionals and take advantage of dozens of speaking and leadership opportunities throughout the year where you can share your ideas. Become a leader in the ASUG community by leading a local chapter, joining our executive exchange, and participating in one of our 13 and growing ASUG Alliance groups, or make connections and learn at ASUG events. Keep learning, connecting, and growing with ASUG.
Hi everyone, good morning, and thanks for joining us today. Welcome to Improve Performance and Cut Costs with Content Management and Archiving. I'm Heather Lima. I'm a content producer here at ASUG. Today's webcast will be recorded, and you'll receive a post-event email with a link to the on-demand recording along with a link to a survey. Please take a moment to fill out that 2-question survey after the webcast, or you can fill it out now by clicking the little icon on the screen below. If you have any questions throughout the webcast, please go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box. We'll be answering questions at the end of the webcast, and anything that we don't get to today while we're on, we will answer offline. So before we begin, please take a moment to answer this nice poll that we have here. You can go ahead and click that screen. It is interactive, and we will show you the results here in a moment. Okay, so now I'll hand off the webcast to Shelley Mann with Zia Consulting. Shelley, take it away.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us and for your valuable input in our first poll. My name is Shelley Mann, VP of Marketing with Zia Consulting. We're really excited to have you join our webinar on how to improve performance and cut cost with our content management and archiving software appliance. In this webinar, Jeremy White from Zia Consulting and Jim McGuire from Rocket Software will share strategies for leveraging key capabilities of the archiving appliance to reduce database size, improve overall performance, and continuously evolve and align with your business objectives. You will also see a live demo of the software appliance. We're going to be conducting a couple other polls throughout the webinar, and we'd really appreciate your input. This will give our speakers an opportunity to adjust their track talk based on your input. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Shelley. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and advance here, and we're going to take a quick look at the results. Okay, that's really interesting. We're kind of split amongst the three, so that we will take that into consideration as we go through the webinar today and kind of adjust and make sure that we're addressing all of these approaches. So again, my name is Jeremy White. Thank you, Shelley, for that introduction. And I also just want to take a second and thank Heather and all the amazing folks at ASUG. You guys do an awesome job, and we're really excited to be part of the ASUG community. And we're really looking forward to our webinar today. This is the first one that we're doing with ASUG, so we're really excited about it and looking forward to your feedback on the polls and also getting to know you folks a little more throughout our journey here. So a couple of things that I thought I'd do, and let me just start by saying, I've kind of been around SAP for, feels weird to say, but just over 25 years now. I kind of earned my stripes on a R2 implementation that started back in the mid 90s with a company called ConAgra Foods, which is based in Omaha, Nebraska. And I think at that time, it might have been the first or the largest ERP implementation in the United States. It was just a beast of an implementation. I think overall it took about 10 years. And one of the things that we realized kind of very quickly during those days, especially because of the small amount of memory that you could actually, or the small amount of memory that you had to operate the system, is that archiving was incredibly critical right out of the gate before even going live. So I kind of, earned my stripes on trying to solve some of those problems early in my day. And then also the problem that comes with too much data in SAP, which is the performance issues. And so today we're really going to focus on archive strategies and also, fixing the issues related to performance, but also with HANA, as you know, the cost kind of substantially increases with the in-memory, with the way that it's priced within memory. So a lot of these benefits associated with archiving are not just performance, but it's also cost related. And then also the ability to give your users access to content in places that they already work. And also maybe some of your partners could be shipping partners or business partners, and providing them with the access that they need in a place that makes sense for them. So I know that everyone here is probably really excited to see the live demonstration. So there's one of the problems that I have is I like to talk about this stuff and I have a hard time keeping it brief. So I'm going to do my best to kind of plow through this information really quickly in the beginning here so that we can get this over to Jim, where we can go through a live demonstration. But before we do that, I just wanted to focus a little bit on what is the solution that we have. What is this archiving appliance? What are the problems that we solve by leveraging the archiving appliance? Talk a little bit about growth and how we solve that problem. And then some of the differentiators with our archiving approach and appliance versus some of the others that are on the market. And then we'll jump straight into the demonstration and the use cases. I think Jim's got 5 or 6 demonstration use cases that he's going to go over. But one of the things that I'd like to say just kind of right out of the gate here is we know that there's way too much content to cover in an hour. So this is almost going to be like a little teaser. And Jim and I and the rest of the team, the Zia team and the Rocket team, we are on standby to have individual follow-up meetings and conversations about the nuances associated with your environment and the challenges that you face and what you would like to do with archiving. So I'm going to just kind of go straight into one more poll here. And this is, again, as Shelley said, it's just to help kind of guide our conversations throughout the next 50 minutes or so. So just kind of curious what you're most interested in learning about today. So all of these items are definitely going to be covered in our agenda today. But as Shelley said, we can kind of focus a little bit more time on these areas if there's something that makes sense or that you're specifically interested in covering today. So the topics that we have planned in the agenda are, typical ones that you would think that are associated with archiving. One is reducing cost. Are you primarily interested in improving performance? Some customers are really concerned about using an archiving solution where they lose data ownership. So that might be something that you're specifically interested in. User experience, how do you interact with content once it's archived? Do you still have access to it in SAP versus external applications? And then also accessing content externally from SAP. So this might mean bill of lading, shipping documents, packing slips, invoices, etc. So these are all topics, like I said, that we're going to cover today, but just curious what you're most interested in seeing. And I think I yammered on there for a good 45 seconds. So let's see what the results say here. Okay, great. Reducing costs, improving performance. So I'm not sure if that's because we led you to that answer based on the name of this webinar, but we are definitely planning on covering those topics in pretty good detail today. So the problems we solve, not surprisingly, are really, and that's not surprising. What we see are the two top things that we're, consistently being approached by our prospects and customers are those two items. So how do we stabilize the cost in S/4HANA, and also, how are we going to improve performance? The way that we do that is by developing an archiving strategy that keeps the tables in, under control and stops that exponential growth. But, part of what we know that you need to do is have access to that content, either through connected SAP applications or externally, or both. So we're going to cover how you do that today. The other thing that we notice, and this is kind of this bullet down here on the bottom left, the reduced costs, what we've seen is that there are other archiving vendors out there that have a very expensive approach to archiving data. So yes, they get the data out. Yes, they can stop and help improve performance in SAP and stop the SAP growth. But the problem is that those archiving solutions in and of themselves are really expensive. And so we've taken a totally different approach to how we solve this. And we'll talk about that as well, how we can stop the cost or the SAP S/4HANA data growth, stop that expense, but also how we can just level out this cost moving forward for you and your organization. One of the things, and that's a little bit different, I think, than some of the other vendors out there, is that we approach this from an ROI perspective. We work with you preemptively and non-billable to take a look at your data, take a look at your DB02 report. We also have a couple of custom reports that helps us quantify the data in your SAP environment. We can also get special insights into where the likely performance issues are based on that analysis. And we produce a custom ROI and pricing calculator specifically for you, your organization, and the nuances that you face based on your implementation. So these are sort of just the probably, and these aligned with the poll that we just took, probably the most important and common things that we see. Some of the other items that we see in terms of what customers are looking to do, and these are more kind of secondary, but can sometimes be equally important. And that's, improving backup and recovery times by having a robust archive strategy. That means being able to make sure that SAP business operations are not impacted when you have terabytes of data that you're trying to restore in the event of some sort of outage. So we can help talk about that, streamline that as well. Enabling external access, the things around governance, records management. We have a couple of different approaches. We have a full records management module, but we can also leverage ILM. We are an SAP certified solution for both ILM as well as Archive Link, and for ECC as well as S/4HANA. And one of the other things is future-proof for growth. So this is a fully managed service. It's a fully managed appliance. So just taking all that kind of administrative burden away so that you can focus on your business at hand there. So let's just take a quick look. This is what SAP growth looks like without having a content archive and management strategy. And what you'll see as this builds out here is, and SAP typically identify, and ASUG and various consultancies talk about how the typical growth with SAP is somewhere between 15 and 20% a year. It's actually happening exponentially. So this should really be a hockey stick chart, but it didn't look as good. So that's the reality. I wanted a better looking chart. So, but what you would really see is that this is, typically exponential growth. And the problem that happens with that exponential growth is that you're constantly in a situation where you need to take new tranches of memory in S/4HANA in order to service that content. The other problem is that the performance starts to degrade. So as you end up with massive tables, let's say that you're looking at pricing tables in the SD module, these things can start spinning out of control, and the pricing tables can start becoming so large, or any of the ERP tables really. So one of the things that we want to do is solve that problem, stabilize and flatline that growth, and move the content out to an external to an external repository where we can manage those workloads offline. So let's take a look at what that looks like when we add a content and archive management solution and an archive strategy. So what happens is as the growth, as we go year over year and we're experiencing that 15 to 20% growth, what we're doing is moving through the archive strategy, moving that content into the repository. So the line that you see below, this teal line here, this is the content and archive management repository. And we're moving that content into that repository. And we'll talk about, whether or not that data is still connected. It is, spoiler alert, but we'll talk about that in more, detail in a few slides here. The main thing to realize here, and what you might notice is, well, why is it so insignificant, the amount of data that's going into the content archive management repository? That's because we can achieve 80 to 95% compression when we move the content into outside of SAP. What we also do, and this could be on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, it depends on the nuance of your specific landscape and implementation. What we also do is reorganize your SAP tables to free up that memory. So it's one thing to move the content, but we also need to free up the resources so that SAP workloads can still benefit from all of that memory. So I'm just going to keep jumping ahead here. So again, what you'll see here with content management in place is that we fully stabilized the cost. So no new tranches required from SAP. We've also stabilized the performance. So we've moved content out that is not necessary to be serviced by SAP resources. And what we've done is also stabilize the cost here for the content and archive management solution as well. The reason that you'll see that cost is flatlined but barely increasing is really just based on the amount of storage that we need to service that content. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth here in just a couple of slides. So let's go through solution differentiators real quickly. No price changes based on any of these items. So this is different than what is industry standard. In most instances, you'll see that based on the number of users, the volume of data that's growing or being serviced in the archive appliance over time that the vendor will charge. They might charge based on number of transactions. They might charge based on ingress, egress. There could be some nickel and diming going on if you need access through an API. So all of these things based on customer feedback, we just eliminated it. We come up with a price, we come up with a solution. It does not matter how many users you have, how much your data grows over time, number of transactions, any of this. The price is maintained and it's stabilized. So as I said, no ingress, egress fees. The other thing is the data is completely yours. You own all of this data. It sits in your cloud tenant, which we'll talk about here in a second. The other thing is fully managed service. This is not something that you have to come back and forth to get upgrades, patches. This is a fully managed service and appliance. And that we also have advanced features that can allow you to benefit and leverage your data in new ways. And also using the appliance work to perform those workloads instead of SAP. So what is this? What we've done is basically, this is and by the way, what's kind of old is new again. And so what I mean by that is this is a 25-year-old proven technology from Rocket Software. What we have done is repackaged it into a modernized solution and into a software appliance that can be deployed in any of the clouds. So that's Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, etc. So what's inside of it is all of the product SKUs that you would expect. So those are down here on the bottom right. So content management, governance, indexing, etc. Everything that you can imagine, we have included it so that there, once again, no kind of nickel and diming on add-ons or when you want to add new features or functions. So I'm just going to keep kind of going through here pretty quickly. As I said, we're happy to schedule some time after this webinar with you individually to go into more in-depth discussions on what some of these things are. What I would like to do now, though, is bring in Jim McGuire. Jim is one of my comrades. He's been in this industry for, I think, maybe a little bit longer than me, even, and has quite a few experiences. So, Jim, maybe if you could just take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself.
Certainly, Jeremy. Thank you for the intro. So I'm the product management director at Rocket Software for our content solutions. And my first experience is very much akin to yours. We're with R2 back in the 1990s. On the receiving end of that implementation, and then when they told us we were going to R3, I volunteered as the SD team lead. So one of the things we found out about a year or two after go live was that response times for certain queries was degrading, and those backups you were talking about at night were running into prime time. We couldn't get it all done in the window we had. So I actually went looking for a solution, and that's how I discovered the SAP Content Archiving Appliance. I loved it when I first found it because it took an approach a little bit different than others when it comes to handling the SAP content. And we'll take a deeper dive into that as we go. Excellent. So let's go. Yes. So Mythbusters.
Yeah, so what we thought we'd do is just get a couple of questions out of the way that we typically hear as we kind of interact with a lot of different prospects and customers. One of them that's most common is that, I can't move my attachment content because it's attached to active transactions. So with our solution, that's, a myth. We're using the standard integrations. From a user's perspective, they will notice no difference. They, wherever the attachments were, we have a process and a utility where we can migrate all of the historical content that's sitting in the various SAP cluster tables, move them to the appliance. And what that does right out of the gate, very fast, quick win, is it frees up SAP resources because SAP is simply asking the external database for the content versus trying to organize it internally. Let's see, next one, Jim, why don't you take that one?
Okay, I can't archive because I need access to the data within SAP. Well, in general, SAP supports reaccess from the archive for a number of transactions, right? And they also have the Archive Development Kit and the Archive Information System that allows you to create custom objects for archiving data. You'll see as we go, there's no negative to archiving transactions and master data once those transactions are business complete.
Excellent. Next one, I've been told that it's better to implement an archiving strategy after I migrate to S/4HANA. So this one is a little bit of a preference, but what we learned, over the past couple of Sapphires is that this is a myth. And, almost all of the customer success stories that we heard at Sapphire is that they realized they wish they would have embarked on their archive strategy prior to going to S/4HANA. There's several reasons. Obviously, keeping a smaller database, migrating a smaller database, but also it's the cost, and then just the confusion of the content. So the general best practice that we've learned and that we've seen coming from customer insights is get your house in order before going to S/4HANA. Jim, why don't you take the next one?
I can't archive the data because there's other integrated applications such as BW leveraging my data. Well, that's one of the things our customers do is they archive SAP data, BW data. Actually, we also can interrogate that data to make sure it's correct between those different environments. So there's no negative to moving data to BW for analysis.
Excellent. So Jim, I went through some of the technical benefits earlier. I think I'll turn this over to you, and if you want to talk a little bit about this, and then I think
Sure.
We're probably jumping into the demonstration after this.
Very good. So that first bullet point, simplify user access, is one of the things I really liked when I first discovered this solution. In general, folks in SAP, they can only get to information as part of those transactions and master data records. But having access to the information outside of SAP for business continuity is something that this solution brings to bear. And then the ability to decommission those legacy systems, that's another thing. We had 127 different legacy systems. And it allows you to comfortably index and archive those legacy systems and still have access to that information using the same tool, you're looking to find the content related to your current SAP instances. And then the compliance with data retention, that's also been one of the claims to fame for the solution, is the ability to migrate to less costly storage media as it ages, and then managing those end-of-life scenarios. The notion of automated tests and processing is something we definitely support. The most common scenario is the automated processing of vendor invoices, but there's many scenarios like proof of deliveries and including those as part of the workflow. And then this notion that I can leverage one solution to give me a single pane of glass to content that's coming from ECC, HANA, legacy systems, all with one solution. And then last but not least is optimizing the performance of HANA and minimizing my storage utilization. So before we jump into the live demo, one more poll question. What approach will you or did you take with your S/4HANA implementation journey? Brownfield, greenfield, or bluefield? Please take a moment and engage with the poll.
Yeah, and this is always an interesting one. I feel like I've been on probably 2 or 3 other ASUG webinars where this question is asked. And it seems like kind of, half and half on brownfield, greenfield, but the bluefield thing keeps popping up as well. So I'm curious to see the results here on our ASUG based on the audience or on our webinar based on the audience that we have.
So I think that should be about enough time. Let's take a look. Okay.
Excellent.
Lot of greenfield. Very good.